Hi, this is Grace Jasmine. I am the producer and director of Loud Karma Productions, and we are back at our podcast today. That's Loud Karma Talks Theater, and I am very excited today because we have Brianna Elijaua with us, and she is the person who won our award last year for her wonderful, wonderful play called The Road Theory. And so we are lucky enough to be with Brianna today. Hi, Brianna. How are you doing?
Hi there. I'm doing so good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's totally my pleasure. So we were talking a little bit before we started, and sort of the theory that we go with here is we're doing this like we're doing live theater. If we have anything that stops us, we probably won't react to it. We'll just kind of keep going, and that's sort of our vibe, and we're doing the live theater vibe.
Just
So
love it.
first, let's do this, Brianna. Let's talk a little bit about your background, your past as far as your career, how you became interested in writing for the theater, and just a little bit about your education and how you got where you are today.
Absolutely. I grew up in Miami, Florida,
Okay.
um, from a Cuban Lebanese family. My parents immigrated here when my parents were children, and um, and my grandparents were just the most resilient, um, selfless people. And truly, I wouldn't even be in a position to be pursuing my dreams if it wasn't for the sacrifices that they made. And so growing up, I think my dad just always was such a vivid storyteller. And I feel like when he would tell stories from his childhood, they played like movies in my head. And I always had a really big imagination. And so as a child, I would always be writing in journals or writing stories I came up with. And then when it came down to it, I there was a drama camp flyer in the blue folders that used to be sent home when I was in elementary school. And my
Uh-huh.
mom at the time was, she knew that I was always creative and I loved to perform in front of my family. Pretty much any place that I could be sharing something creative or getting attention for creativity, I was there. And my mom was like, "Oh, this would be great. Would you want to do drama camp?" And I was like, yeah, of course, 100%. And
That's awesome.
uh, so then I jumped into drama camp when I was 8 years old. And that's where I met a woman named Cindy Keegan, who ultimately changed the course of my life. And I was just really loud and excited to be there. I want to like preface that. Like I was very excited about theater, but I wasn't like
Right.
this natural born talent. I was
Okay.
just really loud and really excited to be there, but she saw something in me. And I'm so grateful that she did see something in me because, she kind of taught me the pillars of everything I stand by now. She really taught me hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And that is kind of my mantra.
Wow, that's amazing. Say that again for us. The-
Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
That is wonderful.
Um, yeah, I mean, she had a million that were they just stuck in my brain. She always told me that. And so to me, she was like, being talented is great. And she's like, and you do have talent, but if you don't work hard, it's really not going to take you very far.
Right.
And so I just kind of went into my life with that idea that it wasn't really about comparing myself to other people or worrying if I was good enough. It was more so about like just working really hard to get to where I wanted to be. And so I
Mhm.
continued learning under her throughout my entire childhood and into my teen years because I then attended the high school she directed at
Oh, wow.
and I acted there. And then I went on to be in Florida State University's BFA acting program.
Right. I noticed that. Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it was a great program, but I would say kind of midway through the FSU acting program, I started kind of directing my classmates and directing productions, and
Hmm.
we would put
Hmm.
them up in our house, and we called it house theater.
Oh, cool.
And that was when I like really fell in love with directing. And I was like, oh, I want to be a director. I love this feeling. To me, directing was kind of this space where you could see what actors were naturally bringing to the table, like their natural energy that they bring into a role. And then you can
Right.
just really help them specify that. If it's like a buffet, I was able to kind of pick my favorite foods and make kind of the best plate out of like the platter that was brought to me. And that to me was just so exciting and so collaborative. And I really felt like, oh, this is what it was all for. This is why I loved this. It was this directing piece. And so I continued to do that. And then COVID hit
Yeah.
and like kind of midway through college for me. And I
So that
hadn't
had to
really
change
thought,
everything for you,
in
did
some
it?
ways
Or
it did. It
hmm
definitely did. We weren't in person as much. I would say that in some ways it was how I am where I am today.
hmm
I think, again, when life gives you lemons, and at that
Sure.
time, I've never liked the feeling of waiting for things to happen for me. And so I think
Right.
and another thing Cindy always told me is like, never be a victim. It just takes away all of your power.
That's
And
also really good information.
that really stuck with me because I was like, it's not that horrible things don't happen to people, they do. And 100% there are situations where you are the victim of the situation. But I think she
hmm
meant more so when something kind of unfair gets thrown your way, you don't need to let the tragedy of it define you because it kind of takes away all your power. You can take that
Right.
tragedy, you could come to terms with it, and then you can, ignite it into something else that propels you forward. And there were times where that was difficult during COVID, but I would say that I got COVID during COVID. And I'll never forget, I woke up and my roommate used to always make eggs and bacon in the mornings, and I could always smell it first thing when I woke up. And I woke up one day and I heard him making breakfast, but I couldn't smell
Oh,
anything.
God.
And I just
That's like
knew.
classic, the first part of the virus.
Yeah.
Oh
And I
boy.
just knew that I had it. And I was so upset. I was so
Oh, I'm
frustrated. I was so
sure.
scared as well. I had teachers at that time that were very immune compromised, and that was very scary. And so the first
hmm
thing I did was, reach out to them and let them know. And I had a job at the time at a metaphysical store. So I was very much, I loved that job so much. I loved talking to people about spirituality. And I was very much in my college 1970s era of spirituality, if I would call it at that time. And so I
Okay.
was really upset to be missing that time.
Sure.
And so I was just I had to stay in my apartment for 14 days. And I was just in my bedroom in my apartment, which is a pretty small room in Tallahassee, Florida.
Right.
And that was when writing came about. I was kind of, twisting my thumbs. And at that time, I was I had been like 3 months social media free, and I was very dedicated to that. So I wasn't on my phone. And I had a bunch of books and I was reading, and I was taking a playwriting class via Zoom at the time. And we were
hmm
reading a lot of plays, and it was just on my mind. And I was like, oh, why not just try this? I kept saying, I'm not a writer, but I mean, like, let me just try writing some scenes. And I ended up just being so inspired by my classmates' voices, my other acting classmates. And
Right.
I just heard their voices in my head while I was writing these characters. And it just kind of like it was the most magical experience. It's like if you've seen the movie Soul when he's in like that purple like flow state, like it very much felt like
I'm
that. Like
sure.
I was like, it felt exhilarating. I felt like I was watching the play happen as I was writing it, as
Oh,
if
well,
I
that is
wasn't
really
in
cool.
charge of the next
Yeah,
step.
that I call that being in the zone. And so
Yeah.
so we can segue. So the play you're talking about is the road theory. So you started to write that during COVID, is that correct?
No,
Or
actually, that
what
was
was
the
the
first
play?
the first play I wrote was called I Like Him.
Okay.
Um, and it was kind of what catapulted my whole writing career.
All right. Tell us
Because
a little bit about what that's about.
I Like Him is about three female best friends, two of which are closer than the third. The third is more of a party girl, and the other two are homebodies.
Okay.
And they have a very beautiful but codependent relationship. And the lead, Sam, kind of gets to a point where she's like, I know we're really into our passions and into our feminism, but oh my God, I'm so lonely. Like, I want to have sex. Like, and she goes on this whole rampage. And the other friend, Val, is like, oh my God, Sam, like, what are you talking about? And then the third one is like, yes, like you should. And long story short, she talks about a guy at Trader Joe's that she thought was her soulmate. The guy who worked at Trader Joe's, she thought he was her soulmate.
Huh.
And the end of the first act, he ends up, showing up, knocking on the door. And Leslie, the third best friend, is like, oh my God, guys, this is the guy that I've been seeing. And it's the
Oh,
guy
that's
that
funny.
Sam thought was her soulmate. And so then Val, the one who's kind of not interested in all of that, gets in charge of deciding which one of them he should be with. But
Oh, that's
underlying
great.
all of that, she's in love with Sam. And so it's a story that's kind of about, these rom-com cliches of who's going to get the guy, but
Right.
underneath it's really about a girl coming to terms with her sexuality and coming to terms with the fact that she's in love with her best friend, and what that kind of means for all of
Right.
them.
Right.
And
Some
so it
soul
did.
searching and some emotional soul searching as well. So let me ask you this. Did you actually see this produced at all yet or not?
Yeah,
Tell us
so
about that.
I ended up putting it up in my house,
Okay.
my apartment, and then one of the FSU alumni, who he's also Emmy nominated, his name is Stephen Guarino. He came to the show because he was in town, kind of doing a show at the time, and all
Mhm.
my friends were like, "You should invite him," and I was like, "Oh my gosh, no, I'm not a real writer. Like, don't invite him." But he ended up coming, and he approached me after the show and he was like, "You're meant to do this. This is what you're meant to do. I don't know
Wow.
what you've written in the past, but I know that you're meant to do this and you need to move to LA and you need to be a writer." And I was really taken aback by that because at this point I was 22. It was the first thing I had ever really written. And
Mhm.
I was very, I felt very naive and very green. And he was like, "Fuck that. Like, this is what you need to do. You should be doing this."
Oh, that's
And
so
he's
great.
really the reason I moved out here. And that was kind of how I became a writer in my education.
Great. That's wonderful. Now, so also I see on your resume too, in addition to that, there's my ex's Netflix account. Tell what
Yeah,
that was before, or actually slightly after that. So that was your next project.
it was.
So tell
Yes.
us about
And
that.
that was a series of scenes that I wrote. We were having our senior acting showcase, and
Okay.
one of my best friends, Danielle, I've always been so inspired by her acting voice, and we were doing scenes together. And so I decided, and I was at the time going through a breakup, and I still had my ex's Netflix and HBO account. And so
Ah,
even though we weren't talking, it was kind of a way for me to still have this like secret communication with him of like, "Oh, you watched that next episode of the show we would watch together. Oh, you are starting this show that we used to talk about. Oh, you now you could see that I also just watched the second episode and maybe now you're trying." So we were almost communicating in this like rogue
oh,
way through the account. And I one night was like, "This is hilarious. I'm going to write about it." And so it was about these two women who were very much in love, but they butt heads a lot, and like it wasn't panning out. And she shows up to her ex's house one day, and she's like, "Why'd you change your Netflix password?" And she's like, "What?" As if it's like this kind of like it was the final thread that she snipped in the
oh, that's
relationship. And she's
interesting.
like, "Why did you change the Netflix
Ah,
password? Why?" But it was like a larger sentiment of, the
sure.
struggle of letting go in relationships and the ways we hold on. And
Great.
so I wrote that for my senior showcase, and it
Oh,
ended up
wonderful.
doing really well. And
And this is
yeah.
at in Florida that you did that.
So no, our senior showcase was actually in New York and LA.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
As part of your Florida program, is that
Yes.
correct? Wow,
Yes.
that is a really cool program. So
Yeah.
tell me a little bit about that program, because that sounds like
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome for the students who do that.
Oh, absolutely. FSU has a great BFA acting program. They have a great theater program in general.
Hmm.
I feel that they have like a very diverse array of professors, so you can kind of get all sorts of acting styles, techniques, ideas, and like they also have a lot of directing classes. And I felt that any program is what you put into it. You can get nothing out of it, you can get everything out of it. And at that time, I was just insert myself into everything I possibly could. So if a like director needed actors for a directing scene, I would be there, or any sort of audition or any opportunity to partake, I would.
So for your
And
senior project, let me interject this. So they actually they set you up to go in like to New York or LA, and they did a what was it
yeah, a
an
showcase.
off a
So
showcase? Okay, so what theater?
so I think I don't remember which theater we did it in New York. I
Okay.
know here we did it at the Gary Marshall
So
Theater
you
in
got to do
Burbank.
both. You got to do both New York and
Yes,
LA. Wow, that's
yes.
pretty cool for an undergrad program.
Yeah, no, it was really great.
And I'm familiar with the Gary Marshall, so that's a nice theater.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was a
it
good
was an
place to do
amazing
it.
way to just connect with alumni, connect with agents and managers, and kind of bring the fruits of our labor from the last 4 years and just get our feet wet in both cities.
And also get a chance to actually come out here and feel like, hey, I could see myself out here, which indeed you do, and you had.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
cool. So
Yeah.
okay, so let's talk a little bit about how we met, and that's the road theory. And so you won the award last year. You won the first place award of the Loud Karma Award, the Emerging Female and Non-Binary Playwright Award. And everybody loved your show, obviously. So why don't you do a little bit of first tell me about the plot of the show, and then tell me a little bit about what your fringe run was like and how that worked for you as far as, how was it to put it up? Where did you put it up? Just give me details like that. So let's first talk about how you came up with the idea, what it's about, just sort of start in that route.
Absolutely. So I wrote the road theory during the writer's strike and the acting strike. So I just moved to LA, and again, kind of a similar motif. I don't like waiting for things to happen to me,
Right.
and nothing was really going on at the time, and I felt kind of helpless. And it was at a time where I was 20, I just turned 24 when I wrote it. And the year of 23 had been a lot of my first year in LA and meeting all sorts of new people. And intimacy has always been a really big part of my life and kind of that bridge between romantic and platonic love. And I think 23 was a big year of just like always kind of looking at people as like, could they potentially be my soulmate? Are they just going to be my friend? Am I going to hate them? Am I going to love them? Like just always open up to love.
Yeah.
And
Kid in a candy store, maybe just a little bit there.
truly, truly just excited to be 23
Right.
and flirty and fun. And I think in a way I was very inspired by a lot of experiences I had had and a lot of moments where I thought somebody could be romantic lover and they ended up being a great friend or vice versa. And I was like, wow, what is that? And that was kind of how the road theory came about. I was writing I when I write, I feel like when I wake up in the morning, I always have like dialogues going on in my head of
Oh,
just
that's
like back and
interesting.
forths.
Hmm.
And I don't know what that is, but it's since I was little, I'll be like, oh, like, where are you going? I'm going to the store. Why are you going to the store? I don't know. Like, while I'm like just brushing my teeth, like, just like fake dialogue happening in my head. And usually it's just background noise, maybe my ADHD. I don't know.
Was that originally related to an imaginary friend that suddenly?
It might have been when I was a kid. I always would be talking to someone, or like when I'd be playing, I never needed people to play with. I would be like, okay, I'm just going to be the boyfriend and the girlfriend, or I'm just going to be the this and the that.
Were you an
Um,
only child?
no, not at all.
That's funny.
I played with friends all the time, but my
Really?
imagination was very active. So then when I was
Right.
by myself or they would leave, I just enjoyed the company of the other characters I'd make up in my head. And
I'm really, really
uh,
glad you found writing.
I know, me too. It made it feel like a useful skill instead of me
Yeah,
being a crazy person.
absolutely. Oh, how
Um,
funny.
and so with the road theory, I had a string of dialogue one day when I was like getting ready, and it was, I know you want to fuck me. How do you know that? The same way you know I want to fuck you. And
Right. I just reread the first page.
it sounds pretty abrasive and
It
silly when you just hear it out of context, but I was like, that'd be kind of a fun, exciting way to start a play.
right.
And so
To
I just
get
started
you
with
get
that.
your attention.
Yeah.
I'm drawn in.
And so I'm not really much of a storyboarder. I didn't storyboard the road theory. I didn't have the idea and then write it all down. I started with that conversation. And that conversation built the voices of the characters as I kept exploring that conversation. And then that
Okay.
first scene inspired the other characters that came in and inspired the next. And so the road theory is basically about two best friends, Kara and Gabriel. Gabriel is very much a realist, grounded, very black and white thinker. And Kara is a very free spirit, manic pixie dream girl,
Hmm.
just like head in the clouds and always seeing things in shades of gray. Like life
Right.
can be so many things. She's very open. And so they're kind of a yin and a yang, and they've been best friends since they were children. But they kind of have this palpable sexual chemistry and tension that has always been so scary for them to confront because they're best friends ultimately. And so Kara presents Gabriel with this new theory that she's thought of called
Mhm.
the sexual road theory. And he's like, what? And she's basically presenting to him that when you meet a person for the first time, there's two roads of connection presented to you, the road of sexual energy and the road of non sexual energy. And it's a fork in the road, and
Interesting.
you have to choose.
Right.
And when you choose the road, you save choosing the road of non sexual energy for people that you're in love with or people who you feel are worth the risk of the dangerous drive. But for the people that you choose the road of non-sexual energy with, sometimes not taking the road of sexual energy still lives as this like potential ghost, as this like potential living in the dynamic behind moments where you laugh too long or moments where a gaze lingers. Like you can't ever truly get rid of the sexual road of energy.
Oh,
And
that's
then she's like,
interesting.
it's the road theory. And he's like, this is ridiculous. And so then the other two friends show up that night and they're very much on board. And the other two friends are Frank and Eve. Frank
Right.
being one of Kara's best friends, and Eve being one of his friends he just recently made, and someone that Gabriel had just recently been, casually hooking up with. And so there's a lot of, dynamics going on between them. They're all very young
It's
and
messy a little
it's a
bit.
little bit messy, but
Hmm.
in a very innocent coming of age way. And so
Hmm.
the entire night is them deciding to test the road theory as if it's a hypothesis, as if it's an if then statement. And Eve, who's a biochem major, is like, wait, you have a hypothesis, and I'm going to set up a night of experiments. And through the experiments of trying to decide if a certain moment or action opens the road of sexual energy or the road of non-sexual energy, the characters learn a lot about themselves, ultimately the
Hmm.
lessons they need to learn to come to terms with their truths and the things that they were most afraid of, kind of not letting those things get in the way anymore.
That's really fascinating. I remember reading it, obviously, for the award, and it's just, I think it's written in such a compelling way. You're moving quickly through the story, it's very engaging. And of course, you get our attention immediately, and people are hooked in immediately. And because we
Mm-hmm.
are, our award is the written word, I've never seen it in production. So I didn't get to see the production, but I'm still pulled through, very rapidly through this big emotional experience that these four characters are having. So that's really a wonderful part of it. So let me ask you this.
Thank you.
Where did you have this at the Hollywood Fringe? What theater?
The Hobgoblin Theater.
Oh, okay, cool. And so did you direct?
Yes.
All right. So
I'm very
tell us
protective
about
of,
that.
yeah, I'm
I
very
directed my
protective,
show in 2019 too, so I get it.
yeah, of the things that I write. And when it came to the road theory, we put it up first in my apartment. I did the similar thing to what I did in college. And when I first moved
Mhm.
here, I didn't have the money yet to put it in a theater, and I put it in my apartment. And I thought it would just be like a fun workshop thing, no big deal. And then we sold it out every single night that we put it up in my apartment. And I was able to fit like 40 seats into my apartment, and we sold it out, and it got a great response from people. I had casting directors start reaching out to me wanting to
Wow.
attend, and it kind of became this thing that that felt bigger than what I initially ever intended it for it to be. And then someone told me you have to do Hollywood Fringe, and I was like, what is Hollywood Fringe? I'd never heard of it. And so then that was kind of what moved us into Fringe. And I have forgotten your question now. What was the
So
question?
you're talking, that's all right. So I'm just entranced with what you're saying. So we're basically talking about what your Fringe run was like, obviously where it was, and what the experience of directing it was like, and just,
Yes.
what the response was like at Fringe.
So my cast, thankfully, my cast from the house show, who were brilliant actors and really, really close friends of mine, agreed to do it again for Hollywood Fringe. And so we did rehearsals in my apartment, and I kind of just found a way to set up the stage the way that I knew it was going to be for Fringe. Um, and directing it for Fringe was different than directing it the first time because I had it had already had a successful run, and there's always
Hmm.
kind of that fear when you do something well once already that
Sure.
you have expectations now the second time, and that what if no one's going to think it's as good as the first one, or what if I'm not capable of, a lot of like little vampires in your head, and you really just have to tell them to fuck off because at the end of the day you're never going to do anything if you don't overcome that.
Absolutely.
So I
Very
think
true.
it just looked like being brave. I was also directing the Fringe version at a really difficult time in my life where I was struggling with a lot of things. I was currently like in a moment of coming out in my sexuality at that time, and
Hmm.
it wasn't the easiest time. And so while I was directing it, I was kind of trying to pour into it as much as I could. At first I was like, I need to leave my troubles at the door and just come into rehearsal because that was kind of what I always was taught. And then I was like, but they're here and I can't just leave them at the door because these struggles are real and they're happening and they're affecting my energy. So instead, I just tried to let that kind of get injected into the show and let the show kind of take on a new life of its own. So I kind of delved more into the way my perspective had changed. You can't really direct something in the same perspective that you had directed it before. You're a new person. And so I let this part of me that, was so afraid of the part of me that was queer and the part of me that I knew liked girls. And I was so afraid of that at the time. And I
Mhm.
was like, let this fear kind of inform a new perspective of this play because this play is all about overcoming your fears.
I have to interject that this is a very evolved way to look at what is going on in your own life, your own emotional landscape, and to be able to take that and move that through your piece and to be able to move that through as a director is a very evolved skill as a director. And I think it's such a benefit to you, especially since the pieces you are talking about here tonight are the pieces they're very related to relationship and very much about emotional struggle and how people interrelate. And the fact that you could bring what is happening with you is always going to bring this different light and color to whatever you do. So I think that's a wonderful skill. And I've not heard anybody address that so clearly before. And I think that's fascinating.
Oh, thank you so much.
You're
I
welcome.
also try to encourage the same thing in my actors too, though. I did tell them, I was like, I know we did this well once. I want you to leave all that shit behind. Like you let this character live and breathe moment to moment. And I almost see each performance as that opportunity. I've built the obstacle course, I've built the playground that we're playing in. But ultimately, you could go down the slide a different way. You could climb up
Sure.
the ladder a different way. The playground is the same. The world is what it is. We've specified the characters, but
Yeah.
let them be new. Let it breathe.
It's almost
You
like
know,
they exist in real time and they're living day to day. And when you reopen the script, they've existed throughout this time, and now they're different too, in a
they
way.
are. And
That's
I
so
just
fascinating.
I don't believe in theater being rehearsed to a point of talking heads or of being
Mhm.
robotic. That's something my first director really drilled into me. She was like, please don't create talking heads. Let it be new every night. If you made a great choice, don't spend the whole rest of the run trying to replicate it because you leave behind all these other great choices that could have come from being in the moment.
Right.
And so that was really the biggest thing I had with directing this is we had done it before, we had done it well. And I think everyone felt this pressure. And I was like, I need everyone to leave that pressure behind and approach this
That's
show
fascinating.
with play and with fun and with
Right.
presence.
And I also think one of the things that, for me too, because I directed The Masher in 2019, and I originally was not going to direct it, but I found that I was the person who understood the work the most. And I actually interviewed several directors, and I thought, you know what, I need to direct it. And I think you have an ownership of your work that sort of feels like that, and you're also very good at directing. So I think that's an important part of what you do. So I think that informs it, and I think it's real. So
Thank you.
yeah. So what was the response?
The response was something way bigger than I ever anticipated, honestly. It
Okay.
was my first Fringe. I didn't know anything about the awards. I had the directors that were kind of working with the Hobgoblin were so amazing. And they were actually the ones who sent the list of potential things to apply for. And I think one night I was going through them and I saw Loud Karma as one that kind of aligned with me. And so I sent this one in. But other than that, the other awards the show was nominated for, I don't remember submitting for. I don't remember how it just the word of mouth was so powerful. And that was so moving to me because I think the best things about theater is that it's such a visceral experience and it's also such a communal experience. And the
Right.
communities you get out of that live empathy exchange between audience and cast is just so special and
It is.
so singular.
Hmm.
And so I remember our first night was the only night that wasn't sold out. And our first night was about 25 people. It was a 50-seat theater, so about halfway full. And someone on the Fringe board had come to see it. And afterwards, they were like, wow, they left a review and they were like, this was really special. I'm going to tell everyone to see this. And I thought that was just like a nice thing they were saying. I didn't
Hmm.
actually think that they would. But truly after that, just, the seats would be filled and a lot of the people I knew, but a lot of the people I didn't know. And that's such a special feeling because I think in
Right.
my work, I really put all of my most embarrassed, intrusive thoughts into my work through different characters. And so every time I hear an audience member smile or laugh at something that I felt so alone in before I had written it, it's so healing for the writer. It
Oh,
really
sure.
is. I'm like, oh, perfect. I'm not crazy because you just laughed at that line, which means you must relate to it.
Isn't
Um,
that the truth with playwrights? We're always taking from real life, and if we have exceptionally disturbing real lives, I mean, I'm always looking at my life, and when something really truly heinous happens, I go, God, that is just going to be just a great moment in a play. So that's
yes,
how I
yes.
justify the crap happening around me. Is it's like, well, I'm going to use that. So I
And
think that you've
everyone feels that way. And I think theater is like the greatest reminder that not only are you not alone, your life isn't as unique as you think it is. And that's a
right.
beautiful thing.
It is.
We've all gone through things that are like, wow, that is
And
crazy.
one of the things I love about you as a writer is I really feel that you have this authenticity where you're breaking down these walls and you're just putting these characters out there and you're just without artifice, you're just like, this is what it is. And they're so organic. And I think that that makes it so interesting to be in the world of a play that you write.
That is, thank you so much for saying that. But
Mhm.
I can't even take credit for that because it's such a result of having brilliant acting friends who their voices so well. Because
Mhm.
I will say every character I wrote in this show was almost specifically written for each actor that played it. And so it lived like I'm so inspired by the way my friends make me laugh. And so it's really just remembering the tone of their voice, the cadence, the syntax that they use, and then building the character becomes kind of writes itself because I'm just thinking about them. And I really encourage writers to do that. I'm like, if you're struggling to come up with characters, stop trying to make them up in your head. Look at the people in your
Mhm.
life, look at their
Mhm.
voices, look at the things about them that make you laugh, and try your best to find that voice through another set of circumstances.
Mhm. So at the Hobgoblin, so I can visualize the space in my head. So it's kind of a very open space if I'm thinking of this right. And
It
did you stay in one set? Because I didn't actually get to see it. I was looking at the written word. Were you? I remember it being one main set. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah. So it was a pretty small theater, just like a pretty standard black box, 50 seats, and we would have to strike the set and bring it on every single performance. And
Right.
so I
It's part
grabbed
of
as
the
many
thrill of
things,
Fringe.
an absolute thrill. And the set's very important to me in this show that the set feels like a cozy college apartment. So I really
Hmm.
did grab every single cozy thing. Rug, we had a record player, we had things on the walls. Like I wanted it to feel very lived in, even though we had to strike it and put it,
Right.
on.
In
And
5 minutes,
yeah. And
basically.
so I just made it part of the rehearsal. I was like, what are we each grabbing? It needs to be very specific. I don't want this to be frantic. My previous director always said, practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And
It's funny.
and I'm such a believer in rehearsal because theater will never be perfect, nor should it be, but you can set yourself up for the freedom. You get to earn the freedom of being in the moment. It doesn't just happen. And the
Hmm.
freedom of being in the moment comes from everything else being aligned and organized so that you can truly live, breathe, and freely be these characters without distraction.
That's awesome. So you talk about what I'm calling being in the zone. And for me as a writer, sometimes when I'm writing a play, I'm totally in the zone. When I wrote The Masher, I was in the zone. I'm working on a play right now and it's craft. Sometimes you just have to go with craft and
Yeah.
sometimes you're not in the zone. Sometimes you have to force yourself to go through the craft to move through your play. So with this play, you were in the zone. With other plays, have you felt that as well, or have you had to go with have you pants? It's called pantsing when you don't have an outline and you just move through. Is that basically how you work?
So I would say pantsing. I've never heard that, so I love
Yeah.
that. Pantsing. I'd say
It's
pantsing is
by the
my
seat of your
main
pants, right?
Pantsing is my main method in the sense that I feel like I have one inspiration piece, whether it's a monologue or a string of dialogue, and then I build
Mhm.
the whole play around that. And I always call being in the zone something beautiful that happens for me like once every 2 years. like that a play truly writes itself and pours out of me, that happens once every 2, maybe once every 3 years.
Yeah.
The in between time is definitely a whole different thing. And
Yeah.
I would say that everyone's craft looks
It's a great
different.
wasteland, maybe. At least that's how I feel
It's
about it.
writer's block is just, I'm like, am I ever going to write something
It's
again?
this,
Like,
yeah, that scary
is my
space
writing
of
career over?
nothingness.
Right.
I get
And
it.
I think especially after Road Theory, it had reached a level of success I had never expected, and people loved it so much, and people took so much away from it that I was like, oh God, have I peaked? Or like, am I never going to write something this good again? Like,
Yeah, it's a
I don't
little early for
know.
the peak.
Right. And I was trying to write after. They're like, what's next? What are you writing right now? And I was like, oh gosh, like, I don't know. I just finished putting this up at Fringe. Like, I'm not writing anything right now. And I trying to write after Road Theory. And like I said, I was also kind of going through a hard time, was really difficult. And I think, again, something else my high school director always told me that was ringing in my head. She was like, creative people need downtime, and it's
Right.
okay. And if it's not coming, it's okay. And if you're experiencing a lot, like for me, I was going through a lot and writing was very difficult and I felt so guilty about that. And then I was like, wait, I need to live a human life in order to write about a human life. And like if you're going through something and the writing isn't coming, it's okay. You're not a machine. And like it
Right.
shouldn't be that way. That
Right.
being said, when I'm trying to write and I'm in a writer's block, but I'm determined to, I'd say my biggest thing that I tell myself is like, just do it. Just write something. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It doesn't matter if it's not good. It doesn't matter if
Right.
it's not as
Just
clear
write
or
crap.
specific. Just
Yeah.
write page after
Yeah.
page after page. And somewhere along there, you'll find a nugget that you could cling to kind of keep going. And that's
Yeah.
kind of what I try to do.
So are you working on a new play now?
I am actually, yes.
Tell us without, I guess, without too many spoilers, what that's going to be about, or as many
Yeah.
spoilers as you want.
It's a working title right now. It's not the official title, but right now I'm thinking of calling it Marry Me Jesus.
Oh my God.
Um,
I love
but
it.
it's basically kind
I
of
won't be
following.
forgetting that title.
Okay, good. I've then maybe I have to stick with it. That's the first time I've said it out loud.
Really?
But
Okay, we
yeah,
said it. We said it here on the
we
Loud
did.
Karma podcast.
But Marry Me Jesus basically follows two men who are planning their wedding. And one of them, is very much has left organized religion behind a long time ago and isn't very much
Mhm.
into organized religion. And the other one kind of secretly still has this attachment to the way that he was brought up. And so he kind of starts bringing up, I think we need to get married by like a pastor. There's one I have back home that's willing to marry us. And the other one is like, what do you mean get married by a pastor? Like our friend Amethyst is marrying us. So they're very much in this dialogue back and forth about he's like, why would you want to have this like traditional Christian wedding? And the other one is like, why are you judging me for like wanting this? Like, are you saying that Christianity can't be for me because I'm gay? And they're like
Oh
having this
wow.
like it's a serious topic, but it's a very comedic discourse because I think it's very relatable whether you're queer or not. I think there's a point to which you have to
Sure.
kind of come to terms with the organized religion you were raised with and what is for you and what isn't and what does God look like for you. And so the whole show is kind of an exploration of what man-made religion means and what having a connection to God or the universe or something beyond yourself means, and like how those two
Wow.
things may not always mean the same thing,
Hmm.
but that maybe there's an answer somewhere in between, and that spirituality is for everyone, even if organized religion feels like it's not for everyone. It's kind of the themes that I'm playing around with, but
Right, that's a huge topic.
ultimately I don't want to give too many spoilers about where
Don't
it
give too
goes.
much
So
away. That I always believe you can't really throw so much out into the universal energy. You don't want somebody
yeah,
else to come up with it like suddenly before you're done.
yes.
And feel that happen. So now mum's the word, but we're very excited about that because I think that is going to be cool and I think it's going to be intense and I think there's a lot of things that that subject is going to give you, it's going to be meaty. There's going to be a lot you can do with it. So let's double back to heavy subjects and intense subjects. And let's talk about what you feel the theme of the road theory was. What were you trying to have people leave the theater feeling or thinking as far as, how did this move them and what was their end note?
I think one, I've tried really hard not try to dictate how my audience is feeling or perceiving something that I've made, because I've
Hmm.
noticed it's so much more exciting when they tell me what the takeaway themes were for them. And
Hmm.
sometimes they're exactly what I intended. And sometimes I'm like, oh wow, like you got that from it. I love that. That's not what I meant, but it's a piece of art that is yours it's yours. And I think, art is like a child. And while you know your child and you love your child, you can't really control how your child interacts with the world, how people feel about your child, what your child's going to say to someone. And that's how I feel about my plays. That being said, that what the themes were for me was
Okay.
was approaching was that there's the parts of yourself that you're most afraid of, or the parts of yourself that feel the most taboo, are sometimes the parts of yourself that could teach you the most about yourself, that could promote the most growth. And that maybe if you really dig into them, you'll realize you had no reason to be as afraid of them as you were at all.
Are you a seriously old soul? I mean, you're like 90, right? Inside this 20 something body. It's you got some old soul stuff going on.
Oh, thank
Hardcore.
you.
You do, don't you think? I mean, do you think that about yourself sometimes, or is that just
Oh,
my
God.
observation?
I've been told that so many times.
Really?
I feel that because I'm 27, I don't know how I'll feel. Like I only know as much as I know from this point. I don't know what it's like to be older, to say that someone is an old soul. But I have been told that a lot. And
Yeah.
I really I do think that the people in my life have just always been very emotionally expressive with me. And both of my parents were psychologists growing up, and they were
Oh,
very,
really? Now that's an
yeah,
interesting piece. Okay,
they're
that
both like
impacts
just
this.
very brilliant people who always made me feel like my voice and like my stories really mattered and were like the most
Wow.
exciting thing that they heard all day. And so
Not
I
many
always
people can say that about their
no,
parents.
no, it's really special. And that's why I
Yeah.
do tell parents and people, I'm like, the best thing you could do for a child is make them feel like their story from school is the most interesting thing you've ever heard in your life, because that is when self-consciousness is the enemy of creation. And if you kind of make someone feel full of confidence and like make them believe who they are, squash that imposter syndrome earlier on in life. I feel like they think their thoughts matter, and then they're willing to think more, and they're willing to communicate what they think more. And I really attribute a lot of that to my parents.
I love that. That is so cool, and you're so fortunate. And at the same time, did it ever make you think that you were going to go into their line of work, or have you thought that? Or right now it's informing what you do, but it's
you,
interesting.
it's so funny. I'm actually finishing up my master's in clinical therapy right now.
Oh, okay, I did
So,
notice that. There's a
so in some
segue for
ways,
you.
in some ways, I guess I have followed their line of work, but I would say ultimately writing is the main way that I navigate the psychosocial parts of life. And
Hmm.
I think people are so beautiful and so interesting, and the answer, I believe so much that like we are karmically connected, and the answers to the things you're going through can only be found in connection with other people.
Wow.
Um, and so I think that's why I love writing, because I feel like it's my way to connect with other people and for them to connect with me. And I've learned so much from working with actors too. I think actors are the best. Some directors are like, oh, actors. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Actors are the best people ever.
Yeah, for sure.
Because
And well,
they're,
you are an actor. You know,
I am.
you've come, and I think so, me too. And I think that very much informs us as writers. You know, you just have been there, you understand what it's like, you feel like you get how it feels on stage. I think that's all so important and shows in your writing. I can always tell when writers are actors or have been actors because it's powerful.
And because you write a line and you're like, God, I would love to say this on stage.
Now, are you still considering doing any acting, or are you firmly in the writing world now in your own mind?
I am always open to the things life brings to the table, and
Right.
I still do acting auditions from time to time. I would just say that my main love is writing and directing, but I will always love acting because it was like the friend that introduced me to writing and directing.
Oh,
And
that's
so
interesting.
I will always love it. And I also feel like I continue to act and I continue to take acting classes because I think it makes me a better director. Like right after Road Theory, I went into acting class. And my acting teacher that month was like, wow, like this is some of the best work I've seen you do. Like, have you been working a lot? I'm like, no, I have only been watching acting for the last 6 months. And I think that watching acting and directing acting makes you such a better actor because I
Right,
was like, I'm not thinking too much about my acting right now because I don't even know because I've just been in director mode and maybe
right.
that effortlessness is making me better. I don't know. But
Interesting how those work together.
I believe that being in acting class as a director is actually so important because if you kind of are on the stage and you're crafting a performance, it gives you more language and more specificity to give to your actors once you're directing them.
Right. I agree with that. That's fascinating. So let's talk about your process. How do you write, like on a typical day? Do you wake up with the conversation? You go, people are talking to me. I've got to must sit down at my computer.
I think, gosh, my writing process is so, I wish I was one of those writers that just like has a routine and wakes
Yeah.
up and drinks coffee and writes for this long and then stops. But like, I have intrusive thought OCD, some ADHD going on, some manic episodes here and there, so it really could look like not writing for like 3 months and then
Mhm.
writing nonstop in my room for 7 days straight.
Yeah.
I think my
I wonder
process
if
also
that's
looks,
writers. I know that
yeah.
a lot of writers have ADHD. A lot of writers have issues like this that we deal with. But at the same time, the story about how writers are sort of like feast and famine in a way, that's really real. I feel like a lot of us experience that. And
Yeah.
fictionally, my fictional self is writing every day from 10 to 2, and I have that same fictional look at myself that isn't real, but I think that's interesting. So how, with that, with sometimes being very active and other times being more in thought about it, let's just say, or totally, totally lost about what you're going to write next. How do you feel like you come up with ideas?
Um, in my life, truly, like just paying attention to scenarios, to the people in my life, to dynamics, to being in the grocery line and hearing a mother and daughter argue in front of you. I think listening is maybe one of the hardest things to do. I don't care what
Right.
anybody says. I think it's so hard. You have so many thoughts in your head. You have your whole complicated life happening, and like stopping everything to truly listen is something that I think can be very difficult. But I find when I challenge myself to really do it, that's where the most inspiration strikes. And that's where I'm able to actually really lock in and solidify ideas. And so I just try to listen to life and I try to listen to my impulses and I try to listen to my friends when they're making a joke or telling a story. I think my friend John the other day was telling me a story that the way he verbalized it, I was like, exactly how you just said that right now, that's going in the play I'm writing right now. And I know that when it's told the way that he speaks, everyone's going to watch it and laugh so hard and think like, God, this girl's brilliant. How'd she think of that? That's so funny. I'm like, oh, it's perfect. I didn't think of it. My
Right.
friend John thought of it and he said it in his voice the same way I thought it was hilarious. And I knew more people would think it was hilarious because it's authentically him. And I think
Right.
letting people be authentically themselves and creating the space for others to be authentically themselves is kind of the process. It's listening. Amy Sherman Palladino is one of my favorite writers of all time. And I
Mhm.
think it's because in her character work, you could see so clearly that these are people she's either observed or dynamic. She knows very well. It's so specific and it's so authentic. And we all know somebody like that. And that kind of stuff just comes from listening. So I'd say that's the biggest part of my process is listening, remembering. If you have a good idea and you're like, I'll remember, no, you won't. And I can't
Yeah.
think of all the ideas I've let fly
Yeah.
by because I've been like, I'll remember it. No, you won't. Write everything down.
Right. For
So
me,
I would say
I use my phone and I turn on video, even though I'm not taking a video, and I'll just like hold it and I'll start talking. And
that's
you get some
brilliant.
good stuff that way. I do what a lot of times I'm driving back and forth from LA to Arizona, right? So that gives you plenty of time to do that. You
Wait,
know,
that is such a good
yeah,
idea. I
it
cannot
is.
believe I need to be doing that.
You might enjoy it because one of the best pieces of dialogue I ever created was when I started talking as both characters doing that. And then I just came home and I sat at my computer and it was like I was, transcribing two people talking. And it was such great conversation. It worked so well. So I guess I highly recommend that. It happens only because of a completely, I have to because I have nothing else to do for 7 hours. So, that's why it happens. So on that note, let's move to the next thing. So what would you think is your advice to somebody who's a beginning playwright? If you could lead or guide someone who comes to you and just says, Brianna, I really think I can do this. Maybe they're a, freshman or sophomore in college. How would you advise them, and what would be your advice?
Oh my gosh. Like, do it. Like, do it. Does not sound like Nike over here. Do it.
Yeah.
No, but
No, just do it, right?
truly, truly just do it. And any semblance of imposter syndrome that you have, learn how to get rid of it now. Because there will always be somebody less talented and less brilliant than you are who's out there killing it and doing it because they don't have imposter syndrome stopping them. And you know what? Good for them. I see so many haters watching something and being like, oh, I could write something so much better than
Right.
this. Like, this
Right.
is, I'm like, okay, well, like, do it.
Yeah.
Write something better than that. Like, push yourself past your insecurities because, like I said, insecurity is really the enemy of the creator. Um, and I would also say that I say this to my friends and they say it's not true. And I'm still trying to figure out whether it is true or not, but I believe it's true. I think everyone has a writer in them. I really do. Everyone has something to say. Everybody has unique perspectives. Like even if your writing is more visuals based, or I have a friend who her scripts look so different than mine. My scripts are like 50 pages for like two scenes, and her scripts are like 3 pages for like 30 minutes long. And but her ability to create a visual mood is so powerful, and I've learned so much from it because I'm more of a dialogue based writer.
Right.
And I'm so grateful that she writes because I'm like, at first she was like, oh, I'm not really a writer. And I'm like, well, writing can look like a lot of different things. Like
Right.
creating a piece of work for people to observe doesn't have to look like words or doesn't just have to look like visuals. It could look like a lot of different things. And I think just knowing that you have something to say and what you have to say matters and your perspective is unique. And it doesn't matter if that story's already been told, you could tell it different. There's just going to be a million things in your head that can get you to stop or not do it. And so I'd say do it, get rid of imposter syndrome, and lock in on your own unique voice, knowing that it is enough, especially if for women. I think that women and people in the queer community have kind of been conditioned to not take up space,
You bet.
um or feel uncomfortable taking up space. I felt so
Yep.
uncomfortable when I won this award last year. I really
Really?
did. Oh my gosh, I felt so uncomfortable because I was like, I feel like such an imposter. Like now people think I'm a writer, but this is only my second play like that I've ever really like produced, and like I don't really know what I'm talking about, and like maybe I'm a one hit wonder, like all these thoughts. And I really had to take a step back and be like, oh my gosh, Brianna, imagine how much further you would be right now if you didn't always have these thoughts that you're not enough or you're not there yet. Meanwhile, so many people who have done less than you are like doing even more because they're not
Right.
afraid. And that's something you should learn from those people. It's a beautiful
Right.
thing to not be afraid.
Right.
Um,
But
so
you're
yeah, so just
you're an example of, you may have fear, but you're still doing it. There's also that side of that coin. I think that
yeah.
it would be great if we didn't feel a fear. It would be great if we didn't feel like imposters. But even if we feel both those things, we're still here doing this. You're talking about your play. We're sitting here on my podcast.
It's true.
We're I guess we're making it happen. So that's really good.
And I guess that's what I would say is every single time I've made it happen, that I've pushed past those thoughts, what it's brought into
Mhm.
my life is so much richer than just the label of being a writer. It's brought
Sure.
relationships and family members together and friendships that will last a lifetime. And so when you actually just push yourself to participate in life instead of overthink and think and think and think, your life becomes this tangible reality that you just can't believe how you've evolved into the person you've become. And so I would really
Wow.
tell people like get out of your head, get into your life now.
All of this is really priceless. We're going to be making samplers of about maybe 5 or 10 things you've said today, and they're going
Oh
to be on
God.
pillows. Maybe in my next studio, we'll have pillows of things that you've uttered tonight because it's been really fabulous. So let's leave it on. What do you hope your legacy is? If
Ooh.
somebody's writing about you, let's say in 25 or 30 years, a university course is looking at several of your plays, and they have to write about you. And what would they say? They're trying to talk about what kind of writer you are and what your message is.
Wow. That is intense.
I
Um,
changed it from your dead because other writers didn't like that. So you're not dead. You're just
You know,
older.
I don't mind the concept of being dead, not in a sad way, but in a way of it's okay. I've had my
Okay.
time. That being said, uh, I guess it would be mm, that no such thing as there's no such thing as let me put this into words. There's nothing to be ashamed of in being a human being learning through life. Like any thought that you've had, mistake that you've made, intrusive thought. I mean, like, there are limitations to this. Like, if you cause an insane amount of harm, that's one thing. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
there
But
is
you're not
no,
supposed to make me cry with this. Okay. So,
there's
but that's
nothing,
so well said.
there's nothing to be ashamed of for anyone. And there's no story that shouldn't be told, and there's no person that loses value. You're not defined by your productivity. You living your human life and all the moments and mistakes that have built up and made up your life, like that is enough. And I really want people to read my plays and in the parts of themselves that they have felt ashamed of or they have felt afraid of or intrusive thoughts that have haunted them at night, if they struggle with that. I want them to know there's nothing to be ashamed of. You've never been alone and that your life has been enough, no matter where it is, no matter where it stops or starts. The experiences that you've had, like you have touched more people than you know.
Wow.
And I don't know. I guess I want people to know that. I feel like people feel the need to fill up their life with some hyper productivity. And the truth is, your life is enough, just like sitting on the couch talking to your mom or sitting with your dog, petting your dog. Like those moments,
Mhm.
there's no shame in anything. Just like being a human is brave enough and like waking up and going about your day. And I
I
think
love
I would
that.
want people to take that away from my work.
That's beautiful. And I feel blessed to have had this conversation with you. It's just been pretty magical. You brought me to tears. That doesn't usually happen.
Oh,
So I appreciate you taking this time with us. And this is Brianna Elijaua, who wrote The Road Theory. And she's been nice enough to grace us with her presence today and talk with us about her work as a playwright and her insight as a human. And so I really want to thank you so much for being with us here today. It's been fantastic and I really appreciate it.
thank you so much. This has been a true pleasure. Thank you for creating this space.
Oh, I'm so glad that you enjoyed it. I'm going to end the meeting.